Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Nigel here with you, Nigel's Modelling Bench, and this is the, I think it's part 2 now, isn't it, of the Jadlam build, and this is the 1/48 scale Supermarine Spitfire Mk.XII. In the last video we got the wings on and everything and all taped up and that. I think it was in the last video, was it, or is it in this one? I haven't edited yet, whatever. So professional, aren't I? So basically the main airframe is up together, and yeah, I remember somebody commenting on the tailplane, so that was in the last video. So what I'm looking at now is thinking about getting some primer on, and to do that I need to get the cockpit masked up, but before I do any of that I need to fit the glazing. Now normally with a kit like this you would get a windscreen like you've got here. You've got a windscreen there that's going to go on the front, and then you get a rear piece of glazing that goes in there, and then you have the canopy that fits between the two. Now other than that, you would normally get that piece, and this piece separate to go over that piece at the back. The problem with that is, and it even happens on 1/32 scale, if you look at the Tamiya 1/32 scale F4U Corsairs, they have a separate piece of the spine here of the fuselage, and they have one for canopy closed and one for canopy open. The reason being, obviously, in real life, this Perspex, whatever it is, Macrolon, will be probably, I don't know, 3mm thick, 4mm thick tops. So in 48 scale, that's going to be less than 0.1 of a millimetre thick. And obviously if it was that thin, it would just snap as soon as you touch it. So to have a canopy that goes over an accurately sized fuselage, the canopy would have to be way oversized because it's got to be thicker than 0.1. If they made it so that the canopy was the correct size, they would have to make the spine of the fuselage much smaller so that it can go over. So what Tamiya have done, they've very cleverly sort of juggled around. So you've got a canopy which is slightly too big, I think, and a fuselage which is slightly too small. So they both look okay when they're together, and obviously with the canopy slid back, it's covering that part of the fuselage anyway. Looks much better than the alternative. Now what Airfix have done here, I've never seen done before, and it's very, very clever. None of the other builders in this series, as far as I know, have done it. None of the builders that I know anyway, have used this part. And what they've done, they've moulded this canopy, but you can see that inside, see that rectangle inside there? Yeah? That is basically this piece here, moulded in. So what we got to do, we have to cut a section of the fuselage away, which is why that hole's so big, and then this is going to fit on here, and the canopy is going to stick slightly out on the sides and slightly out on the top, and it's all going to look like this is the actual canopy slid back over the one inside. So what I've got to do now is do some clever masking, and I've basically, first of all, rather than, because normally we would mask and paint the outside with the interior colour first, what I've got to do here is mask off this rectangular panel and obviously the front edge, and paint the fuselage colour, which is going to be the green. I've got to paint that colour on sorry, the colour that's going to be on there. So when you actually look through the clear part of the outer canopy, you will see the green camouflage colour up to that line. So if I take this stick, you can see we've got this line along here in the moulding. Let me get it so you can see it. Hang on a minute. It's very difficult. There's a line across the bottom there, so I'm going to paint all that up to there, and then obviously straight down there, because obviously that's where the front of the fuselage ends. And then, so I'm going to have to mask up here, but also I'm going to have to mask. The clear part there, and mask this clear part here, but leave this front edge exposed so we get some green paint on there. It's going to be very, very tricky, but if I can pull it off, it's going to look great, I think. It's going to look much better than the alternative of having a massive, great, huge canopy slid back. It's going to look extremely accurate. It's adding to the build time immensely, because this is going to take quite a while to do, I think, and also all the cutting and sanding and filling and everything is going to take a while as well. So let's give it a go. And we'll start off with some masking. I'm not going to do it on camera. I'm going to go and mask it, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like when it's masked. And also the other thing we need to do is get all these control surfaces on: rudder, elevators, ailerons, flaps. All of that needs to go on We also need to look at getting all this done as well on the bottom. I have actually, where's my pot? I've made up the parts that come in halves. So I've made up this scoop here, that's all done, and that's going to fit in there in the wing like that. That really needs a bit of trimming to get it to fit. Haven't done this one yet because we've got to paint the radiators inside. I've done the carburetor intake, that's going to go up there, and I've decided I'm not going to use that fuel tank, so I've got to fill those 2 holes in that I drilled. I'm going to show you how I do that as well. That applies to all models with all holes. So there we go. Right, so I'm going to get this clear part masked, and then I'm going to show you what I've done, and we'll see how it looks. There we go. It's masked, so you can see, or you can't see. In there we've got that rear panel, the glazing, which is normally behind the canopy, that's masked. The front edge of the canopy is masked because that's clear, but then the rest of it is all, you can maybe make out on there. You can see the framing. So we're going to spray the inside of the clear part with the green, and I'm going to use XF81 dark green 2. I'm going to spray that green so that when you actually look through the canopy you will see the fuselage colour. That's the idea. That I think that's how Airfix intended this to work. So what I'm going to do is grab one of my little sticks to hold it. I'm going to hold it right on the edge. That's going to be extremely difficult. Probably better off using my little trusty old block of wood with blue tack on it. It's better to use white tack really. In fact, I've got some double-sided tape there. It's not double-sided tape, it's single-sided tape. I can stick that there and that should stay. No, I don't trust that to stay where it is. Let's get a bit of this. What we'll do is we'll push this onto here. You've got to be really careful with clear parts because they will just suddenly snap. So be careful when you're using blue tack. What we'd often do is fill the inside it with blue tack. Obviously in this case we want to spray the inside. So I'm hoping that is going to stay on there. Okay. Right, so I'll put that back. These things are great for holding parts for spraying. The only trouble is these are the ones that have the rubber tips on so they don't damage. If I use the ones like this with the teeth, they'll dig through the masking tape and damage the clear parts. So sort of rocking a hard place there. So I'm going to grab the instructions as a backing. I've got some XF81 mixed with leveling thinners, and just going to do a quick little test. Yeah, pressure's a bit high actually. Just turn the pressure down a touch. Right. Oh, and just one other thing. I've done these sprue gates with these clear glass files. Now, I've just done the Harkonnen ornithopter, or hornicopter as Paul likes to call it, and basically use these glass files to get a great edge. Now I know that John Ollick is also building one. He's doing the other one, the whatever, Miriam, whatever it's called, ornithopter. Now he's going to give me a big shout out and say a big thank you and everything for doing it and that. And I know that every man and his dog is going to jump on these and say, wow, they're absolutely amazing. And everybody will be telling you can get them cheaper elsewhere. You don't need to get the Infinity ones and this, that and the other. You can get them cheaper on Amazon. But I find these Infinity ones being absolutely brilliant. These are probably about 2 years old now and they're still good. And as you can see, what they do is actually polish. If you can see that on my fingernail there, it's polished it. And yeah, they're awesome for removing spray. I use them all the time. But you know, people start noticing them now, and this is what happens. Somebody does something and then every YouTuber picks up and says, look at these amazing tools and everything, and you can get them cheap and everything and blah blah blah. And then what happens is I use them and I get people, do you know you can get those cheap? Oh, it's just it goes in circles and circles. So anyway, so there we go. So I'm going to spray this. I'm going to give it a good coating because I don't want it to be translucent. We don't want to look through it and see light on the other side. We also need to make sure we get in on the angles to get the edges, because that part is in a frame. So what the other thing we need to do really here is, once this is dry, is paint silver, because obviously this interior part of the fuselage is silver. There's text messages. As soon as I took the camera on, everyone started texting. Right, so that's that done. May as well put the rest of the paint on. Use it up. Use it up, wear it out. Ain't nothing left in this whole world I care about. There we go. There we go, that's it, used up. Right, so I'll get the airbrush clean. I think I'll wait for that to dry for 10 minutes and then I'll give it a quick splash of silver, just so that when we look in through the window we see the silver of the interior. Back in a minute. Okay, so while we were waiting for the paint to dry here, I've done the elevators, the rudder, the flaps. It's got to go up a bit there, and the ailerons. So that's all done. That needs to go up a bit higher there. That's okay. I can sand that out, blend that in. Okay, so we've got the back edges all nice and tight. That's the main thing. The rest of it can be blended in. So there we are. When you put these little flaps in here, these little bits, be careful because they will go in deeper. So just put them in, tack them at the back, and then just nudge the fronts down until they're level, and then put a drop of cement in, and you'll be okay. Otherwise, they'll be sunk in too far. You can see we've got a bit of an issue with levelings here, but we can blend all that out with our sanding sticks because these flaps are just, I think they were plywood, weren't they? So they can just be flattened out. Right. So we've got our hood masked. And as you can see, I've covered the edges because I don't want silver on the edges because that might show through on the green. So I've got some LP70 here, which is gloss aluminium. Just do a quick little test. Yep, that's coming out fine. So I'm just going to put a drop. Playing up. Airbrush is always the same with metallics. Just give it a very light coat just to give it that silver colour, so when we look through the window we'll see silver in the background and not that green colour. So there we are. I'm going to go and give the airbrush a good clean out now. Always give your airbrush a good clean after you've done metallics, and we'll go from there. So we'll get this tape off. And as you can see there, when you look close up, you can see we've still got the green edges, but we've got the silver on there. So when it goes on, when we look in, we'll see silver. What we can do actually now is come in and where's my Nice tweezers? These things are amazing. Just come with our Nice tweezers and we'll just grab the corner of this. There we go, we got it. Pull that out there, you can see we've got lovely clear rear section there. The other thing we can do is take off this. Be very careful with the tweezers, you don't scratch, because we won't know what this looks like until we actually unmask the outside. It's okay undoing the inside, but it's the outside that matters. So I'm going to have to take it off this blue tack and then remove this piece of tape from the front, and then get inside here, lift that up, up and over just like that. There we go. Get off. Masking tape always wants to stick to everything except what you're trying to stick it to. So now when we look here, we should see that what we have is we are looking through the canopy. So we can see the front edge is clear. We've obviously got to mask the outside and spray that green. We've got we're looking through the canopy and we can see the green. So you'll see what I mean when I put this on here. You can see we're looking through the canopy at the green. On the inside we can see the silver. Okay, so it looks like that's the canopy slid back over that little bit of glazing on the inside. So really pleased with how that's come out. It's a good idea by Airfix, that is. We don't have to worry about doing any seam filling here or anything because it's supposed to be a separate part. So that's worked out really well. So that's ready to be glued on really. Let it dry a bit more and actually have a good look at these edges and see that they're all good. I think they are all good. if we've got any paint, this is the beauty of using the XF rather than the LP. Just grab a cocktail stick, get a new one. We should now be able to come along here, and as you can see here, we can just, with the cocktail stick, just remove any paint that we don't want there. There we go. And there we are. We can see we've got a nice, we've got a nice crisp edge on our clear part, and as I say, that's ready to be glued in place now. But I don't think I'll glue it in place just yet because that silver paint still hasn't dried, which is why it's so easy to remove now, and I've got little flakes of it getting on the clear. So we'll leave that for a minute and we'll do that at a later date. Right, so we've got to press on now with some other stuff. So I'm going to get the windshield off, get that glued on, any seam sealing, whatever we need to do, and then go from there. Right, so we've got the canopy off, the windscreen should I say. I'm going to grab my nice clean cotton bud and just go around the inside and make sure there's no finger marks on there. Now we've got the gun sight fitted, make sure that's done. So give it a little clean up. There's actually a mould seam here, which just needs a little light scrape just to get rid of it, otherwise it makes the canopy sit up too high. And make sure you've got your sprue gates off the bottom, and the canopy, the windscreen should I say, is actually a perfect fit. Now, I'm going to fit this with extra thin. A lot of people say don't use extra thin, it makes your clear parts fog. It doesn't. What will make your clear parts fog is super glue. So I'm just going to literally touch that on there, and that cement will capillary around underneath. Okay, and then coming over to this side, you can see it's a doddle. You just get your brush, make sure it's got some cement on it. Don't worry about using too much. Just touch that on there and you will see the cement capillary around. And that will be enough. You can run some around the bottom there. That'll be enough to hold that in place. I don't like using PVA glue and everything for my clear parts because basically it doesn't dry solid, it doesn't dry rock solid. Some people use acrylic glues. I would just rather use Tamiya extra thin wherever I can. So I'm not going to mess with that. Certainly not going to put my fingers on the edge and check the seam, because if you do that, what will happen then is the glue will capillary up under your fingers and you ruin your clear parts. What you can do, if you want to feel there's a step, you can use your end of a cocktail stick. We can feel that we've got a step on both sides, so that will be okay. That will just get some Mr. Surfacer in it, then a cotton bud, and that will be lovely. So there we are. So there's our windscreen fitted. Now this rear panel, or this rear screen, this is going to go in. Okay, so I'm going to put my finger on the top of there. I'm going to make sure it's all even. Okay, and then I'm going to take my extra thin. I can see I've got a gap. I've got a gap at the top, like it's not dead square. So what I'm going to do here is just sand off or file off a tiny amount at the bottom, just to try and close that gap up at the top. I don't know if you can see that, but when I push it in, there is a tiny gap at the top. Yeah, so I'm just going to get that. Obviously I went wrong. I fitted it all before I painted it and everything, but I obviously didn't do it right. There we go, that's got it. So we need to make sure it's nice and even. We also need to make sure, where's that cotton bud gone? There it is. We also need to make sure we don't have any dust or anything on the inside. Okay, so that can go on there like that. using my fingers I can feel that it's central, and I'm just going to use one finger on the top, grab some extra thin and stick it in there. As you can see, I'm working my way over towards the clear part. I'm not actually touching the joint, I'm going over towards it. Right, that should be enough. I'm going to put one more drop on the top, because we do have a bit of a gap there. Right, so that's in place now. And then on the bottom edge, just a touch on each side so that it doesn't just fall off, which we don't want to happen. And then I'm not going to touch it again unless it needs to be moved, and it doesn't. So there you can see we've got our slid back canopy there, exposing our lovely seat belts and everything on the inside, so we're all good. We're all good to go. Okay, and that there I'm going to put some more because there is still a tiny gap, so hopefully it will go in and gel and do its thing. And then what I'm going to do there, I'll put some Mr. Surfacer, and I'll use some mahogany, I expect, because it's the closest thing to the green. And then you remove it with a cotton bud, because we want to step there anyway, because remember that's the canopy slid back and over the top. Okay, so there you go, you can see how that's gone in. Well worth the time, beautifully designed and very thoughtful by Airfix. So that front canopy should be pretty much gone off now. The glue will have gelled so we can safely touch it. Yeah, we'll leave that, and then we'll grab some Mr. Surfacer. So I'll leave that for now. I think, as I say, in my little group, not my group, but the group of people I know, should I say, I think I'm the only one who's gone with the open canopy option. And yeah. So these two holes at the bottom I've got to fill in. This works for any model you're doing. Just going to grab a cigarette lighter. I get a piece of the Airfix sprue. I'm going to hold it over here, over the flame. Okay, you can use a tea light, but if you're only doing one bit, there's no point. I'm just going to hold that until you see the plastic go glossy, and then I'm going to pull it, just like that. Let it just start to cool off, because what I want is a longer, thick bit. Normally, if you're doing stretch sprue, you would pull it, but what I want is this thick bit here that I'm pointing at. I want that to be long, because that's what we're going to use. Okay, so I can get that. So I can cut that off there. I can cut that off there. And then I can shove that one in that hole while it's still soft. Okay, so I can put some extra thin in that hole. Shove that in there. We can't see it through the cockpit now, so that's good. If you can, just trim it off shorter. And then I'm going to shove some extra thin in there. I haven't test fitted the other one, but I know it's going to be okay. So I'm going to put some extra thin in there and then shove that in there. Give it a good old twist. There we go. And then we can literally cut them off just like so. And that's our two holes filled in. And that is the best way to go about filling holes in that you didn't want in your model. And there's your stretch sprue, which you can use for antennas and all sorts. Okay, so we'll save that in case we do need it for something. I don't think we do. What I'm going to do is cut that thick end off. There we go. We'll add an antenna to this with a bit of fine easy line. There we go. Right. Let these canopies dry now. I'm going to go around with Mr. Surfacer and then do with a cotton bud, just like you saw me do on the wing root. And then I'll get them masked and get some painting done. But what we'll do here first, we will mask the clear, okay, and the windscreen, and we will spray the interior colour first, so that when you look inside, you actually see the interior colour. And then on these edges, we'll have to brush paint these edges in, because what I'm going to do to mask them off, I'll just stick masking tape over the front and backs and then fill the gap in the middle with foam to stop us getting paint in the cockpit. But there we are. She's looking lovely, isn't she? For a little kit that's basically 15 quid, she's gorgeous. Right, back in a minute. We're back next day, and I've gone round now with the cotton bud and the Mr. Surfacer, just like I did in the wing roots. Removed all the excess Mr. Surfacer. Sorry, did I say Mr. Extra? Mr. Colour levelling thinners, get it out, Nige. So yeah, I've gone round with Mr. Colour levelling thinners on a cotton bud and gone round. You don't have to worry about the Mr. Colour levelling thinners getting on the glazing. If you've watched Sully's build of his Lancaster nose, he was surprised when he said the levelling thinners didn't affect the clear parts. Levelling thinners, this one here, the blue and yellow label, or the ordinary Mr. Colour thinner, it will not affect the clear parts on a cotton bud. I wouldn't soak them in it, but when you're wiping them over, it's absolutely fine. This one, Mr. Tool Cleaner, is a definite no-no. That is basically the same chemical as extra thin, so it's going to destroy your clear parts. And also this one tends to fog them as well, so be very careful. Just use levelling thinners or use IPA. The best way to go about it, if you are new to the hobby really, is to put it on and then within a couple of hours use IPA. If you leave it overnight, isopropyl alcohol, sorry, IPA. If you leave it overnight, the chances are it's going to be really difficult to remove with IPA. So I tend to use levelling thinners, and there we go. And then you can see that the seams are all done. What we'll do, we'll get the, when we get it all masked up, we'll spray over this with interior green to give us that interior green colour on the inside, and then that will be like our primer coat, and we'll keep using the interior green until we get the seams sorted. Otherwise you'll see primer through on the inside. Not that it really matters, but it is good. Something I should have done was used black cement. In fact, I may be able to get some in there now. Generally I would go around the edge of my clear parts, and I think here we're just going to see some grey plastic, which is a shame. I don't know if I can get this to capillary up. It is capillarying up. This is the Mr. Hobby, Mr. Cement SPB. It's a black cement, as you can see. It's black in colour, but it is capillarying up. And if I can get it to go all the way up, it'll hide that. It'll hide that clear, that shiny. You can see there we've got that shiny edge. The same here. What I generally do with clear parts is go around the edge with a cotton bud. But it would appear that on this one I forgot. Probably because I'm old and senile. There we go. Now that is capillary down this inside the cockpit now. That's alright, it'll just dry out, look like a wash. But I don't think... No, it's not going to go through the Mr. Surfacer, is it? Duh. So unfortunately we have this edge down here. Hopefully we won't be able to see it, but at the end of the day, if I need to, I'll put a black wash in there and then go in with a cotton bud. But we shall see how it goes. Right, now what I'm concentrating on now is on the bottom here. Now remember I said these flaps, they sort of stick out, they're a bit too thick really. So what we're going to do is sand them back, and what I'm going to do is use a pencil. I'm not going to use a pen. I can use a pencil and just go over there and then I've got a sanding stick here, and you can see I can just sand away on here, okay, staying in a circular motion so we don't get any lines or anything. And you can see that the pencil remains on the wing, but it's coming off the flap, which means the flap is sitting higher. So I can go to a thicker stick. This is a 400 grit, which is well worn out. It's going to take forever to sand that down, so I'm going to go back to the skinny stick, which is fairly new, and just basically sand away until all the pencil's gone, or most of it anyway. Now also on here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's ejector pin marks. I missed them earlier. You can see one there, one there. So I'll just go over those with a pencil, just like so. There's one here that I've already got rid of. Okay, and then with the skinny stick, I can just lightly, again, circular motions, no pressure, just very lightly sand over that until all the pencil disappears, and that way I know I've got rid of the ejector pin mark. Same here. There we go. You can see we've just got a light ring of a pencil line there, just keep going until it completely disappears. Don't use a sponge because you'll never get rid of the lump. And then the same here, be careful not to get rid of that hinge detail. Let's go back to the skinny stick because it's going to take more meat off. Luckily they're all raised so we can just sand them down, which is good. There we go. And then we can grab a stiff brush and just brush all the... I can see there we've still got a bit of a raised lump there, so I'm just going to lightly sand over that. Again, the secret here is not using pressure. And there we go, they're all gone. They're all gone, so you can see on this one has the ejector pin marks, that one doesn't. Okay, so I'm just going to continue here sanding down these bits until we get rid of any, till we get it to nicely blend. That'll also help to thin out the trailing edge as well. And then I'll come back. Oh, the other thing we need to do is look at these. So if you remember, I put those in there. They've had about 18 hours now to dry, so we can just come along and cut off the bits at the top. This is where I filled these holes, and then with our skinny stick, and if you want to, we can use the pencil again, just so we can see when we're flush. So I can sand away there. As you can see, it's only sanding off the raised circular part. If I keep going, quite sure that is there, that ring looks like a line of super glue or something. There we go, so that's those filled. Again, stiff brush, get rid of that, get rid of that out of the panel lines. Job done, that's that got rid of. So there we are, it's all about sanding, guys. Sanding sticks are one of the most useful tools in your arsenal. So I'm going to carry on with this. As you can see, I put some pencil lines on there. Straight away, it's taking the pencil lines off the flaps, but not taking anything off the ailerons. There we are. Alright, so I'll just keep going, get both sides done, and I'll come back and show you how good it looks. Okay, so we've got the masking done, we've got all the sanding done underneath, everything's good, and you can see we've got our canopies masked up. Now you can see on here I've used a green masking fluid. This is the Mr. Hobby Mr. Masking Sol R. On the side here they show you can use it and then cut it with a knife, and that doesn't really work very well unless your knife is absolutely perfect. It tends to just peel up, and once you, it's not like masking tape. If you cut masking tape and it lifts, you can put it back down, recut it, and it stays down. Once you lift a corner of that, it's up. That's it. You've got to do the whole thing again. So I never bother with that method. But what I've done here, you can see I've gone around the edge of the canopy because it's a compound curve and it's convex. Then obviously the tape didn't want to form, so I've made a thin strip around the sides and then used the Mr. Masking Sol R. This is my favourite masking fluid, the VMS one. This has a downside to it. It does tend to go off in the bottle. Here's a new one. You can hear that, it's like a liquid. This one is, to be fair, about a year, 18 months old. And it's starting to solidify. So when you try and use it in larger areas like that, it tends to just dry too fast. So I've used the Mr. Masking Solar. They're both available from Brooks Models, so get yourself on over there. And if you spend more than £15, use NMB10 for your 10% off. I can't remember if I already told you that in this video, but I'm going to keep promoting Rob's company because I want him to do really well. So yeah, NMB10 for 10% off 15 to $49.99, and if you spend more than £50, you get 20% off. Now, bear in mind he also does kits, so worth remembering. You can get 20% off a £50 kit, then it's well worth having. So there we go. So that's all masked, ready to spray. What I'll do is I'll shove some foam in there when this masking is dry, so I don't get overspray on the cockpit, and then I'll go around with some cockpit green to get the colour in there. We'll have to brush paint the edges, I should think. But there we go. What I will do here, once it's dry, I'll just put masking tape over the opening, and then put foam in the middle. So the masking tape will seal the edge of the canopy and stop overspray getting in behind it. And then, as you can see here, as I mentioned, we got this grey plastic showing through the frame. So if when it's painted we can see that grey plastic, I'll go in there with some black oil wash, and hopefully that'll get in there and just cover up that grey plastic. I may even go in with some very thinned black paint. We shall see. But what I should have done was painted the edge of the canopy first, but I forgot because I'm a silly old Hector. Right, so I'm going to call that a day for this one. We've done quite a little bit in this video. You'll notice I'm ready for primer. I'm going to do seam checking, so I'm basically going to spray primer here, here, all around the windows, here, here, and everywhere where there's a seam, especially down here. And then I can do any rescribing, refilling, whatever I need to do to get the joints absolutely spot on, or as good as we can. You'll notice I've got no sticky out bits glued on. We've got the antenna, we've got the guns, we've got undercarriage, tail wheel. None of that is glued on because I don't want to go breaking any of it off. So that's, you know, in this stage of just checking for seams. What we will do going forward, we will get all those on before we do the final painting and everything, but we shall see. So there we go. So good looking little thing, isn't she? She is a good looking little thing, and I can't wait to see how that that works out when it's all painted. That's going to look great, I think. So I'll see you back for that, and thank you for watching. I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.